so great to be with you both.
Yeah.
And got a father-son story here, so Andy, you're the dad. Let us hear your voice so that the listeners will know that it's the dad.
Sure, sounds good. Even though my son's voice is deeper than mine. But so we're excited to be here with you, Cal. Thanks.
All right. And Adam?
Yep, it's Adam, and we do sound alike, I'm told, often. So good call out there, Cal.
No, we got the baritone going there.
Yeah. And he was a singer. He had a country band after college where he did some singing.
That was what my dad was most proud of me for. So, it didn't go very far, but he loved that. Yeah. So.
Man, there's a lot I got to find out here. So what really strikes me is you hear of father and son businesses. And when I think of that, I think of a restaurant where the dad's running it and the son or the daughter starts at like 8 or 9. They're cleaning up and they gradually grow into a role to maybe take it over years down the road. But you guys started way down the tracks. You're in your 40s, you're in your 60s. Yeah. How did this company get started?
You should kick that off.
Yeah, it's kind of been a 10-year journey that it eventually evolved into, on my end at least, and then I'll talk about how I wrangled my dad off the sidelines to be a part of it. But I was coming up in a sales arena, in a sales leadership arena at Amex, and for a minute there thought that was going to be what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And I got exposure to a subject and a coaching methodology that was really transformational in the way that I thought, in the way that I viewed myself and others, and big things like career navigation, to be honest. And it was subject positive intelligence, and Shirzad Shameen, who you know, right, that went and was very helpful. Struck up a friendship with him and really was immersed in that. And I think it really it forced me to look at the way I operated very differently. And so as time went on, as I was really leveraging that framework about the way I operated, I started to recognize that I probably did not want to keep doing the corporate path. And so I made the decision in 2019 to jump out of this 13-year stint I had done with Amex, which was a tough decision to make because they're very good at keeping you on board. And I went in to start working with Shirzad, and we started working together on the company that he has now built, Positive Intelligence. And as I'm doing that, and I started to make a kind of a passion pivot within that decision, I start working with leadership teams. I start working with groups, helping them kind of go through the similar, framework and the methodologies around this subject that have been so profoundly impactful to me. And as I'm working through all these leadership teams with these big brands and small companies, I started getting exposure into some other peer advisory communities. And I was in the room, right? I was in the room with some of these groups, and I'm working around CEOs that are in a peer atmosphere. And I really, for the first time, just started to pay attention. You and I have had some conversations, Cal, and I joke about the reticular activating system. It's like you can be around a lot of things, but then all of a sudden, once your brain tunes into it, you see it everywhere. And so all of a sudden, I knew these existed, these peer support communities, but I'd never paid attention to them to the level that I now was. And I was paying attention specifically to the connection that was being demonstrated, the authenticity, the vulnerability. And I left one of these workshops that I was running, and I felt two things: massively inspired and massively envious. Because I thought, boy, that would have been really something that I would have loved to have had access to in my VPGM level roles. And I can totally understand the human element of why these folks in these organizations like this. And then I thought, well, but there's a lot of people that we don't qualify for these other groups that are out here, right? There's a lot of groups out there. They're very niche. They've got certain standards and qualifications. And there was this whole universe of folks from the world I had operated in that I thought, well, they can't go there, so where can they go? And that's when I pulled my dad off and I said, hey, I know you're trying to cruise off into the sunset at this phase of your life and career, but I got an idea.
Well, that actually brings up an interesting question. Was your dad your support, your mentor growing up?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I had that was a privilege. I had a lifelong coach, mentor. We're best friends. And then he was always there for me. So I always had that. Yeah.
And your dad was working at the same company.
There was a little stint where we did overlap. He was on the global travel side of Amex, which operated honestly almost like its own company.
Yeah.
But we had a 2.5-year period where we were both in the same brand umbrella. And then he went off and started doing some different things after American Express, which he can shed light on. And I stayed in that path.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you watching Adam growing up? What kind of support or mentoring did you give, or did you think he needed?
Yeah. Listen, I was a young parent, so part of it I always say is we kind of grew up together. So I'm not sure it was profound parenting skills. But I think what I noticed about Adam all the time is that even at a young age, it was just intrinsically driven to just go succeed at whatever he was doing at a very young age, which I found a bit unusual. A lot of the hard work, which I probably didn't do too well, which is why he probably really navigated towards the PQ, positive intelligence stuff, was, hey, try not to put too much pressure on yourself to succeed. And this was even in Little League baseball. But he was really, really competitive. And I was kind of his coach. I used to always joke, we would go running or doing sprints on the field if he was getting in shape for a sport. And I would just say, hey, just 5 more minutes, right? And that was kind of my thing with him his whole life. You can do anything for 5 more minutes, right? And 5 more minutes over time became 30 minutes, which means you can work harder than everybody else and ultimately be in better shape than everybody else on the team just by adding 5 minutes, right, at a time. So those are kind of some of the little tricks and things that we did together growing up. But it was, for me, I always joke, it was as much fun, probably more fun for me than it was for him, because you do live vicariously through your kids too. So, and he was a really good athlete, right? I played a lot of sports too, and then now go watch him succeed. But he'll tell you, right? He would put such immense pressure on himself to succeed that sometimes you took the fun out of it a little bit for himself, right? Just because that self-inflicted desire to do great every time.
You know, that brings up an interesting question, because here he is deciding to start his own company, and you know that he's got that quality about him, and now he's calling you up saying, hey, will you come join me in my company? But now you're going to work with this guy who's got that quality. What were you thinking when he said, Dad, I want to start this business, and I'd like you to come in with me?
Well, first I had no question in my mind that he would not succeed. I knew he would succeed. Once he puts his mind to something and he sets his direction, he's gonna make it happen. So I knew that. And we've always talked, we would sit around and have a cocktail and always talked about doing some business together. And then for me, it was almost a flashback. So I started out as an entrepreneur myself. And
what were you doing?
The first business I was in, believe it or not, was buying and selling horses. So I grew up as a young kid in Western Pennsylvania, and I worked on a dude ranch where they rented horses out by the hour, and I started working there at 13 years old, just shoveling manure out of the stalls for the horses.
That's a start.
That's a start. And some would say I shoveled shit for most of my life, but that's a different story. But over time, then I kind of learned that business, and at 18, my dad had bought a small farm, and I said, let's open up a riding stable here. We'll rent these horses out. And I just did it. So I went and bought these horses at auctions and put it together and hired my friends to work there. And we had this riding stable business. And then from there, I was going to school at the same time at the University of Pittsburgh. And then I stumbled on another job with somebody selling home movie cameras and film at the time, right? Before you did it on your phone. And again, I learned that business and decided to do that one on my own and did that for a few years. And the cool part was I pulled my dad into those businesses as well. And my dad became kind of like working for me in those businesses.
So you understood this from an early
Yeah,
age.
yeah, and it was a blast. It was fun because we operated as friends, and yeah, it's a whole different level of being the parent and being the friend and business partner.
How does that work? Like, you asked him to do this, so he knew like, you were going to be in charge.
Yeah, it never really came up, but it kind of, I was the one that was driven, I was the one that had the ideas, but there was never like any competition for, he had a successful life doing other things, and I think he was just very happy to have the opportunity to do that and hang out together and do something, interesting together. And it's kind of the same with us. When he called me, I said, it's a fantastic idea. I think it'll work too, so let's give it a go.
Why were you so convinced that it was going to work?
Well, two reasons. First one I mentioned, which is I just know once he figures something out and he's going to go, it works. So you could go throughout his whole life up to his 42 years old, and I could point you in all of those, right, each of those cases. The second thing was I was also worked in the corporate world for the majority of my adult life, and I saw the need for that there. And actually, one of the questions he asked me, he said about this, he said to me, in terms of this community, he said, who did you talk to when you were running the travel business for American Express? And I said, it's a great question. I said, not too many people. I said, it was kind of in my silo, your head's down. You talk to some people, your friends or colleagues, but it's a very competitive environment. It's not a place where you're going to go to somebody and say, boy, I really don't understand this, or holy shit, I can't sleep at night. Right?
Is that a big problem where you cannot admit vulnerability?
Yes. It was, especially then, I think. It's probably getting better now because you see this transformation taking place where people are trying to be a little bit more authentic and vulnerable. But yeah, you had to pretend like you had your shit together all the time, even though you were worried about what was going on, right? And maybe you didn't understand something. And if you had a safe place to talk to people in a judge-free, safe zone that really had your back and cared about you, it would have been immensely helpful.
I'm listening to you say that, and what really hits me as somebody who asks questions all my life, I find that we all have this childhood curiosity, and it peaks at 4 years old. That's when the child can ask a parent like 300 questions a day. And they've done studies, up to 300 questions a day. And then next year, child goes to kindergarten and is told, no, you can't just blurt out a question. You got to raise your hand. And pretty soon, it's the teachers who are asking the questions. And, by junior high school, for the students, they're not really up to putting their hand up and embarrassing themselves. Yeah. And then when they get a job, and then you don't know what's going on, are you going to admit that by asking a question? Like, no, you're not. You're just going to swallow it and try and figure it out in some way. But what you're telling me is that having somebody that you could just turn to and ask a question in the moment is something that's invaluable.
Yeah, it is, exactly. And I know we'll dive into Crew a little more detail, but that's really what we're creating here, is this safe place, judge-free zone where this community and the networking is not transactional, but it's very human connectedness, built on trust, right, and authenticity, where people really care about you as an individual and want to support you and help you, whether that's a question, a business problem, a personal stressor in your life, but that's what we're trying to do here.
So, Adam, how do you put your first foot forward? You have this idea, now you got your dad at your side. What's the next step?
Yeah, it's trying to think back to what those earliest steps were. I mean, it's the fortune I had was I had just operated in a startup environment, building my own coaching and consulting thing, working with Shirzad with his startup. So I had recent foundational examples that I could pull on about just how you kind of get the ball rolling, right? And you start with kind of one thing at a time. I'm very big on simplifying priorities and thinking about what's that next thing that I can do, that if I do that, everything else just gets a little bit easier, unnecessary. And so we built just a small little nucleus of a team to kind of start really, meeting regularly with and take this idea. And then I thought, well, actually, one of the first things I needed was this concept of, well, what are we going to call ourselves, And I'm having coffee in the morning one day and just kind of Googling, right? I wasn't using AI yet. I wasn't asking Pi or ChatGPT, and I'm randomly just kind of thinking, and then all of a sudden the word crew just popped into my head, and then of course, I generally know what crew means, but I look at the literal definition, and I said, boy, that just feels right for what I'm envisioning here, which is, to his point, this unconditional support system. We're all on the boat together, right? You don't leave a crew member behind, right? And
there you go.
And everybody on the crew is important when you're thinking about that kind of an analogy. And so it felt powerful, but it felt welcoming. So that was a really big thing, and I think that helped me then start to continue to refine the definition of what this could be, and then we start basically kicking it around with people as well. Hey, are we crazy, right? I mean, I think we got a good idea, but we did ask some friendly folks, but that we knew that we had trust with, that we knew would tell us the honest truth. What do you think of the idea? What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? Would you join, right? And we got a lot of initial positive
That third
reinforcement.
question is crucial.
Yeah.
Because now you've got a starting base.
That's right.
Yeah.
So how many people that you asked that question said, I'm on board, I'm on the crew, let's go?
It wasn't a ton because, there's, I don't know. I'm a small friend circle kind of a guy. And so when I think about who I was really thinking I could trust for this, that was a small group of people. So their word mattered a lot, right? And so when they told me they were really excited, and there's a couple that are, in the room with us here today and are in advisor roles that, really helped me feel good about the idea. No one does this alone, right? It's like sometimes others actually help you believe in it as much, if not more, as what you do. And then then you go, okay, this might really work.
Was there a moment that you basically said, okay, we've got the backing of people who we trust, what's the next step?
Yeah, I mean, we started building the website. We started thinking about having an app platform to have digital connection. We just started thinking about, what is this going to look like? What's the interactive roadmap?
How many people did you envision would be joining?
No idea. I mean, down the road, I had a vision. I actually was thinking back to a lot of Seth Godin type material, who I know you know.
Yeah.
And what I thought about was, hey, all we need to do is find the 100 people in a room that are saying, I'm looking. And I was pretty certain there was at least 100. Yeah. And I'm pretty certain there's more than 100 once we continue to get the message effectively out there. And that was really my only thing. I was like, as long as we do that, Seth told me.
Just get my 100.
Yeah.
100 raving fans.
Yeah, I think Kevin Kelly.
Yeah, was the okay.
Yeah. He makes a big point of that.
Yeah.
And when you take that step, are you saying, okay, Dad, we've got to really look at who is coming in? Are you carefully selecting people, or are you putting it out there and accepting anybody who likes the concept?
Yeah, I mean, in these early days, it was important to us that people really felt and connected with the ethos that we were starting to get kind of going and getting it put in place. And so we wanted folks that were, yes, there's a VP and above general level of criteria as far as we're all at a certain phase of life and career, right? There's that relatability factor. That's kind of a minimum criteria standard. We're in leadership roles. We really want this to be a community about leaders, for leaders, because they're asked to do so much, and yet no one ever gives them the oxygen masks to put on themselves very often. And so I think it was just who's going to be really able to help us build that trust and build that authenticity and be energizing about it. And really, honestly, what it came down to, Cal, is we needed go-givers, right? We just didn't need go-getters. There's a million go-getters out in the world, but we needed people that are as interested in giving as they are in what can I get. And that's a very, I don't know what percentage of the population it may be, but it's a very specific demographic that you have to connect with.
Were those people naturally attracted to the idea? As soon as they heard it, they said, yes, that's it? Or did you have to really seek the go-giver out?
I think the majority of the folks that have joined in these earlier days, in this first year essentially of our launch, it's been very quick. It's been a very quick connection that we can tell, it just feels right, it works, and they're the ones saying, I'm as interested in what I can do to help you all and to help others. And what I'm really picking up on is there's a craving for people to have that platform, to give back more, to contribute more, to impact each other. That, we think that happens all the time in the day job, but, the scorecard metrics in the average day job don't really focus you on that maybe quite as much as you would like. And then maybe there's some other areas outside of your typical day job expectations where you'd like to go a little deeper, go a little wider.
So everybody understands that, hey, in my job, I look to the left, I look to the right. I don't have a support system here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of things are based on my experience.
Yeah.
And I would like to pass those on. And so they are giving, but they must also be realizing that in this kind of community, they're going to be getting a lot too.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's really early adopters too.
It is.
Right? It's early adopter type folks. Not everyone in the world is an early adopter that wants to do something when it's just getting going. I mean, you got to think about it. In these early conversations, we were asking people to join a community that had no members. Or we've got 5. Then it was 10, right? I mean, it's, that's a networking community. So, I mean, that really required
Some selling.
well, not some selling,
it's a
but
good thing you're a salesman.
Yeah. But and that's why we had to sell on. But this is what we can be.
Yeah.
If you want to be a part of it, if you want to lead, right? That's the other thing. The beauty about selling to leaders is leaders like to lead.
Right.
They don't want to just come in and be students. They don't want to come in and just be participants. They want to be leaders in all areas of life. That's why they've chosen leadership.
Right.
And I said, we're looking for leaders. We don't have it all figured out. We just have the core bones and the nucleus figured out.
Yeah, like we established the values early
Yeah.
on. We said, what do we want the values to be? And we said, we settled on 3 words: authenticity, trust, and courage. So the authenticity just means be real. And a place where you can be real, because even in your corporate environment, can you be completely open, honest, vulnerable, just be your real self, bring your real self to crew. In all your conversations with the members. And then trust, knowing everything we do here, it's our version of Vegas. What we say in crew stays in crew. So this could be a personal thing you want to talk about. And what we say to the members, this is a place that's judge-free, safe zone, where if you've got a business challenge or stressor or personal challenge or stressor where you think the experience, insight, or advice of some of the members could be helpful, throw it out there and we'll kick it around. And just try to support one another that way. I think that's powerful. And to Adam's point about, getting the first 5 and then the next 5 is everybody coming in are founding members, right? And that's what we call them. So this first 100 members, our first 100, they're all founding members, right? And they're kind of grandfathered in as founding members for life. So, and I think to Adam's point, because they're leaders, they wanted to be part of something, help us shape it. And we've said all along, or Adam used to say, I'm not interested in building a rocket ship. I just want to make sure we build something that really provides value to everybody. And if it grows because of that, it'll grow. And it might grow. So we never talk about scale. right? About how fast we can scale this thing. Let's just keep doing it as well as we can do it, and see where it goes.
So you got 100 now.
We're almost
Almost
there.
there.
Yeah,
Almost there.
almost there. At about, we'll be at this is kind of around the 1 year mark. It was a very soft launch to kind of start last
Yep.
fall. So, and it's pretty quickly accelerating in the recent months.
Yeah.
Do you have to put out a lot of publicity to attract people, or is word of mouth doing the job? Because if you're having the people come in that you want, they'll probably know the people that should
right.
be brought to the table.
I think it's been a little bit of both. Now, there's not a lot of publicity. It's the modern day version of publicity. It's the organic campaigns. We do a lot of LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
I'm
Yeah.
introverted, but I'm trying to do more of that because I have these little old posts out there, and every time a member has come through, a great percentage of them say that some of those posts were really important or really impactful. And so I'm recognizing that, it's not, I'm detaching from the vanity elements of it and recognizing there's a certain percentage of 100 people or 1,000 people out there that I'm trying to get this message out to, that's how they consume stuff, right? And that plus, yes, the evangelizing. I think that once people are in this experience for a certain amount of time, once they're in it for several months, once they've gone to some events with us, now they know how to talk about it, right? Now they can really pass that energy along.
Hey, that sounds cool. I'd like to learn more about Crew. So that's the organic growth. So we feel pretty confident that, we get the first 100 members, which we'll have here shortly. So we'll end this year, over 100 members, that you'll get the compounding effect, right? The 100 becomes 250, the 250 then becomes 500. So that scale starts to happen organically and naturally. But to the point, your question you asked earlier, Cal, it is important. We think the quality of the community is the quality of the membership. So to Adam's point, they've got to be go-givers, right? It can't be just, we talk to everybody. You can't just sign up and be a member and pay. You have to go through like this
That's what I was
interview
asking.
process.
Yeah, so
Yeah, and we probe that, right, to just understand where's this person coming from. Because if somebody doesn't really, through that conversation, stress their desire to give back, and all the questions are 100% is what do I get, and when do I get it, that's probably not the right fit.
interesting. During those conversations, did this idea of connection come up very much? Because this is after the pandemic and everything that's gone on, 2020, 21, 22, now.
Yeah.
Were people talking about how life had become so disconnected that they needed to connect again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was going to add one piece on it. I think, yes, very much so. And again, Adam mentioned earlier, this is a leadership community. So we've got two levels in the community. We've got a VP level. So you're a vice president, you lead a team. And we have what we call our C level. So you're in a C-suite job, CEO, CFO, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, and you lead people, clearly, right? And probably a sizable P&L. So we have those two groups. But I think what a lot of people, back to your connectedness, that people forget, that during that pandemic, there was a lot of focus on, hey, how do we keep employee morale high? How do we keep people engaged? How do we let them feel connected even though they're all working from home? But nobody actually talked about the leaders who were also in those same roles. So they were isolated, working from home, and it was all on them to try to keep everybody else's shit together. But nobody talked about them. So where was the place that the leaders who share some of the same challenges and problems can come together and talk about things that challenge them? And we think this is a place you can do that as well.
Do leaders have time to think that way? I'm remembering a post you put up on LinkedIn where you talked about a CEO's working hours.
Yeah.
And there was basically a space between Friday afternoon and Sunday where they had free time to themselves. It seemed like every other minute was taken up
Yeah.
Are people in that situation like longing to be able to break away and have these kind of conversations, or are they just totally locked in and there's no way out?
I think it's both. I think they're longing for it, but I think many times they're locked in. That's why we're trying to help them understand, but there's an option, right? There's a place. There's an accountability group, an accountability forum. There's a place where you can do this, because I think unless that's brought to your attention, the average go-getting kind of leader, right, is going to be heads down, tunnel vision, and you're never going to feel like you have enough time. But we all know we have enough time to do the things we love, right? If we break down our hours and our days, we do, right? Most of the things we love are less than 2% of waking hours on a consistent basis if we actually break them in. Things like working out, things like spending time with family. It's
Less
quality.
than 2%?
Yeah, if you even break down like want something for an hour a week for 4 weeks out of the month, and you actually add it up, and that sounds like a lot. How could I ever fit in an hour, right? A week for 4 weeks or for 2 months? In the big scheme of all the hours of the day, it's a very small percentage, and we will carve that for the thing that matters to us a lot if we think that it has enough holistic impact. And I think the challenge is getting folks to think about, how can this be helpful to me? I've got this big to-do list. How does detaching from it, spending some time with this white space over here in this forum, then bring me back to that to-do list even better, more creative, more energized, more resilient than before?
I'm thinking of something that was passed on to me by a professor not long ago, who said, if you're going out to do something and you're focused on it, you cannot be curious at the same time. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be curious, that requires taking a step back or a step to the side, yep. And that basically knocks you off that laser path, yep. that you're on. And so I guess the key here is being able to understand that, if I take this step to the side, when I get back on the laser path, I'm going to be much better for it.
Yeah. And also a big part of it that ties to our ethos, Cal, is we're trying to help people really think more holistically about how they're defining success. So if success is only in one category of my life, then I'm going to be highly likely to stay in a tunnel vision, heads down, I don't have time for anything else mentality, to the point that I end up with a bunch of massive regrets, right? But we're trying to help people say, no, success is no success at all if you're not having healthy relationships, if you're not having happiness and fulfillment along the journey. That's the biggest failure, is to be just successful in that productivity lane, that lane that will suck up all of your time if you're not careful. And I think when we tell that to people, when you take that step back and you think about, well, how do I really view success, or why do I really view it that way? Then I'm thinking, okay, now this is a different prioritization conversation about whether this is worth it for me. Because, you know what? I do have a leaky bucket in my personal life right now. Or you know what? I did get this job that I thought I always wanted, and I'm still not that happy and fulfilled, and I think there's a lot of other things I'd still like to try and do. All that comes up. All that comes out, right? When you're actually in a place that allows that to be focused, talked about, and you have peers around you, it's through osmosis kind of sharing that. So that's a great question. I think we have a part of our challenge is really getting people to think about, what is success really?
Which brings us to the line. Everybody's laughing because we were talking yesterday. We're in Atlanta at the hotel, and you brought up the line, Andy, and I had never heard of this before. But this came to you after many years of hiring people, seeing careers come, go, what people took in, and you distilled the whole question of success into a line. And I thought, man, I never considered this. Maybe you could explain to people. And when you explained to me, you didn't show me a line like we have a whiteboard here.
Right.
You didn't put it on a whiteboard. I mean, I could perfectly understand just from the explanation. So
Yeah.
give us a little background on how the idea came to you
Yeah.
and how you framed success through the line.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I wish it honestly had come into me a lot earlier, right, in my working life. Because I probably would have done some things differently too, right? Because I was just like I was just focused on, hey, the old elements of success, right? I'll be happy when I get that next big job, right? And then the goalpost moves, and I'll be happy when then, versus looking at it holistically. And I think it was in probably the last like more corporate gig that I had that I was thinking about the culture that we wanted in the company. And I said the culture I wanted was to create an environment that attract and retain great people, and where great people can do great things for themselves, their careers, their colleagues, their customers, and the company. And it was about then when I was thinking about that and talking to every employee about what we were trying to be for them, because I truly believe that a successful company has the inverted pyramid, right? The right side up pyramid is shareholders are at the top, then customers, and then employees, right? It's that flipped, right, inverted pyramid. So the employees first. If you do that really, really well, they take great care of the customers, and the bottom line will flow, right?
And the shareholders are happy.
The shareholders are happy, right, at the end of the day. So that's kind of about when the line came up, and I was thinking about how do I explain to everybody coming into the company that what they do every day has to be purposeful and fulfilling and important to them. And I thought that's when the line came up, right? Which is, here's the line, and basically it's the day you start till the day you die. It's kind of, there's the dash out there, which is similar to that. And then I just put a line that says, here's the first 20 years of your life. Basically, you're in school getting educated. And then the longest part of your life is the next 45 years till you hit 65. 45 years. And then if 65, if you're fortunate enough to hit 65, and people would call it retirement, then you have, if you live to the average life expectancy of 78, 79, you got another 13 to 15 years on the other side of that. So the message there for me that I wanted to articulate to everybody else in a really easy way is, why would you ever want to wait and just struggle through those 45 years of your working life, which is the biggest part of your life, where it's the most hours invested. You'll probably spend more time there than you will with your family, to hope that you're healthy enough to have a good 13 or 15 years. The real focus should be the 45 years. How do you make it fantastic, right? That's where it should be. And how do you make sure what you're doing you love? There's purpose to it, right? It's fulfillment there. And if you do that really well, when you get to that point, you don't have the regrets that, holy crap, right? What if you're not healthy when you get to that point, right? And you can't enjoy anything. This is your life. This is now.
How did people respond when you told them about the line? The line, was it like an epiphany to them? For me, it was huge, because my line is like very different from everything you described. And it was the first time I really saw my life that way.
Yeah, it runs the gamut of mouth hanging open, like, wow, I never thought of that, to that's really cool, to I'm not sure I get it. but because there's all different levels of employees you would talk to. I think everybody got it, but so from entry level all the way to the most senior jobs, we talk about that. So it affected people differently, I think, but most people got the gist of it and understood what we really were trying to say, not in kind of the essence of your life, but it was also to say, what we're trying to do here, if you work here, is make sure that this time that you spend here, whether it's 1 year or 45 years, is meaningful to you and purposeful. And if it's not, then you should go find something else that is.
You were years ahead of your time. Years. You know, I did a podcast with a guy, an author named Bruce Feiler, just put out a book called The Search, and he was talking about how the shift in people has gone from seeing a job as a ladder to climb, and now there are like archaeologists digging into themselves to find a sense of meaning and purpose in what they do. And if they don't find it on a job, they're like gone.
Yeah.
You were seeing this how many years ago?
Yeah, it's quite a few years ago. I'm 20, maybe.
Wow. Did you ever explain it to Adam back then?
Yeah, I think I did, actually.
Yeah, I remember him. I might have even been in a conference when you did it.
Yeah.
In the back of the room. And you know, that was the thing. I mean, while I was in this corporate path, the back channel conversations we always had, because I had an entrepreneurial mind at heart, I think, you know, that I had tried early on in life, doing some voiceovers and not wanting to go down this path. I was adamant about it. I had a lot of encouragement from my family, generally speaking, about doing this, right? Making a decision that was maybe different than the path I had signed up for a while. And I think a part of that is because he believed in that, right? Because that was a conversation about the line. And I remember being in the car with him, telling him, I'm not going to stay at Amex. I know I could keep doing this job, and I could keep doing it well. And
you were doing it, you were moving along in a great fashion.
Mm-hmm. But my goal was, I said, I am not going to, the biggest thing I want to do is show to my son, who was now born at that time, he was basically, I made this decision right when he was being born, is that whatever you want to do, man, right? Whenever you decide to do it, even when it seems like totally counterintuitive, too old, too late, whatever it may be, you do it.
Oh, you're going to be the ideal father. At least it would have been, when my father heard that I was just like taking off to go around the world, when he saw that I was basically at a place where I was poised, I had already been incredibly successful and was poised to do more, and I was just leaving to travel around the world. He just could have no comprehension of that.
Yeah.
And to his last day, he looked at me and said, I just don't get this guy. Never understood.
Yeah. Which I think is awesome. That's what I admire stories like yours, Cal, and my dad's, because I don't think you didn't have what I had, right? As far as a father that was saying, oh yeah, you want to do it, you can do it, right? Or totally getting it, you know? And so it's really interesting to see, you know, both routes you can make it happen. But it is really helpful, I think, if I'm being honest, when you have that person you really trust and have an unconditional support with and love with says, oh yeah, you for sure should. And he was very encouraging in that moment, right? I said, I don't know where exactly this is going with this decision to go off on my own back in 2019, but I have to do it because I know, and I know Bezos talks a lot about this, right? You have to constantly visit that rocking chair. You have to constantly think about how much are you going to hurt or regret by not doing these things. That's one of the best ways to navigate big decisions. Yeah.
And you know, that's why my father couldn't understand me, because he had no regrets.
Yeah.
He was a manager for IBM for 28 years, and he loved his job. He loved coming home to his kids. So he couldn't like understand why I would just get up, and this is before cell phones, and be on somewhere on the other side of the world where he'd have, my mom would have no idea where I was.
If you were alive or not.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes I think back, and now that I've got 3 kids of my own who can easily just go to their cell phone and check in, and a wife who's like checking in with them 18 times a day.
Yeah.
I sometimes think of what it was like to be my mother and have no idea where her child is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like a postcard might come every few weeks or so. Basically
was-
saying,
yeah.
having a great time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, yeah, even when he was going to go to college, right? And I can remember him coming and he said, man, I don't know I have no idea what this pick is a major. All my friends are picking majors. And I remember having this conversation. I said, I don't give a shit. I said, just go to school. I mean, who knows what they want to do at 18 years old, right? I mean, that's nuts. Just go, and if something is appealing, follow. And it's more about meeting different people from different places in the world and thinking differently. That's what it's about. It's not about, I'm going to be this or I'm going to be that.
And yet you followed your dad's footsteps and ended at the same company.
Yeah.
You know, maybe precisely because he didn't say, no, I want you to follow this path.
All serendipity, by the way, because
Really?
I dropped out of college because I found it got in the way of my education because I hated it, right? Because I couldn't sit in a classroom and listen to some professor with 200 other people, right, and get engaged, right? It just didn't work for me. So that's why I went very entrepreneurial. And, right, I ended up in the airline business by accident. Then I worked for another company, and then the company I was with, we sold it to American Express. And that's how I ended up at American Express. And I thought I'd have to spend 2 years because I had a 2-year contract, but I spent 12 years there, right, after that. So I never had any master corporate plan at all.
Wow. So this whole thing is serendipity.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I was really going to try and avoid it.
Yeah.
It's just that when I was 25 and I tried doing some voiceover stuff and I'm singing in a band and I'm being the creative guy that I am at my core, then I started I was a hyperachiever though at that time, and I was comparing myself to friends. And I was just in a fluctuating starving artist scenario. And my ego at that time couldn't handle that, right? It can now, but it couldn't handle it then. And so I thought, okay, I can't just keep doing this. I wasn't wired at that time to be free-spirited and patient enough to let things that I probably could have done well come to fruition back then entrepreneurially. And so I jumped into the safe path. And I think a lot of people end up, honestly, in the corporate path because it is the safer, more stable, right, faster way to forms of external validation and forms of what we would normally view as success. And it can be for a lot. And I want to make sure that the message comes through. This is not about a community that's always having someone figure out that they need to make the hardcore pivot and quit their corporate job. Because I think many times we're helping people totally re-engage and re-inspire into that job that they're in, but through a different lens. Like you just said, your dad had no regrets, right? He lived a life working for IBM for 28 years that he was very happy of, proud of, probably. Right?
And after he retired, he always said, "I'm playing with house money."
Yeah.
You know, he got a bedroom set right when he was married, and he died in that same bed.
Yeah.
But everything that he did was carefully chosen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he just always knew what he was going to need to live a joyful life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of amazed by the serendipity in this, because if anybody would look you up on LinkedIn and they would see, oh, American Express, how many years?
It was about 13.
13, how many years?
About 12. Yeah.
About 12. 13. And now you were in sales, and
I was in sales leadership, and then I ran a business there too, right, as a GM.
Yeah, both of us sales leadership. He got to a much higher level than I did.
is there something about sales that everybody should know about, should go through? And the reason I'm asking this is I just saw a clip of Arnold Schwarzenegger talking to Tim Ferriss on Tim's podcast. And Arnold was saying, you know what, back in the 70s and the 80s, I'd watch all these actors put out movies, and they didn't want to sell the movie. Their attitude was, I'm an artist, I just do what I do. Somebody else's job is to sell the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Arnold looked at that and said, there's my opening. I'm going to sell myself. And he literally sold his self to the point of the Terminator and beyond.
Yeah.
And then he was saying, people have got to understand, like, whatever you do, whatever you have, you should be able to sell yourself and to sell whatever you want to pass on, because otherwise it's nothing.
Yeah.
And these other people thought they were artists, but he was saying, I'm here to tell you that sales is the art.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
both see it that way?
Yeah.
I mean, I totally believe that it's the art, and it's an X factor, I think, too.
For us. Yeah.
Well, honestly, for anyone that's going to try things entrepreneurially, because I leverage everything that I had to leverage in a selling and sales leadership and sales teaching capacity every single day.
Yeah.
To execute right on anything that's entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it, actually.
Right.
I would question how anyone does it without having, like, and I think you don't even maybe recognize that you have it, even if you didn't spend time in sales. You probably just have a gift for being able to do it if you're effective in the entrepreneurial lane. Yeah.
But I agree with you completely, Cal. It is an X factor, as Adam said, and we often talk about we can't imagine starting a business and not having that skill, because to be able to articulate what you're doing to members, to vendors, right, to suppliers, to advisors, to investors. I mean, it all encompasses some selling for sure, and it's a big deal.
So,
Like Arnold said, it's a big deal.
he basically said, if you can't do it, you have nothing.
Yeah.
So you're about to have a meeting here.
Yep.
What do you hope comes out of this meeting and in future meetings? How would you articulate what you're hoping to give everybody in the room?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the main purposes that I'm looking forward to is being able to thank everyone that's been a part of this journey to get it off the ground, and thank them in person, and be able to celebrate together what we've done, right? Because this is happening because they believed in it with us, and they've helped us figure it out, and they're helping to evangelize it, and it's going to be really nice, and to be able to have that moment with everyone. And then I think the thing that we always find coming out of these, and we're recognizing the event, the getting together is going to be a major part of this for us in the future, is there's just so much energy and so much, and that's why you're here today, Cal, too, right? Because we're trying to really make sure that essence of human connection at the most real level is happening unlike anywhere you've experienced it in your commercial arena. And honestly, possibly even better than you may be getting it in your personal life, right? In some ways, because these are folks that get it, and they get you, and they're going through the same challenges and all of that. And I want us to recognize that's what we're all about, right?
Yeah.
We're all about, yes, we want to be better operators. Yes, we want to figure out if we're on the right paths. Yes, we want to bring this stuff back into our organizations. But we're about contributing. We're about relationships. We're about giving to others. And really, when you're focused on that on a daily basis, you feel really good about who you're becoming. And I think that's the message that we'll always want to have reinforced every time we have the privilege of people coming in from all over the place to be in a room together.
Yeah, well said.
All right, Andy,
Yeah.
so looking at the line.
Looking at the line.
If you hit 90,
Yeah.
where do you see Crew being?
Yeah. Well, I think
24 years from now.
Yeah, 24 years from now. So we never wanted to put a number on members, right? Is it 10,000? Is it 20,000? Is it 100,000? We think of
100,000 people.
We really think we could impact the world with this, because this is a human connectedness community. And that's worldwide. So, we have a member flying in from Spain who's going to be here today. And we've got a bunch of members in Canada that are going to be here today. And we have interest from Asia and India, right? We're just not there yet to do that. But our North Star is to be seen as the leadership community where we connect leaders and we impact the future. Because the world needs it. And you might not get it from politicians, but you certainly
Oh, you're not going to get it from politicians, that's for
Right,
sure.
so, right? But we think leaders can really, you touch a lot of people as a leader, and we think that could be a big impact. So that sounds, right, grandiose. but-
100,000 people. I'm glad to be. I asked that question at this moment, and I hope that I can just see the journey through and watch as you're growing and growing and growing. Do you, Adam, as the one who came up with the idea, have any idea like where this will be in 25 years?
I really don't, Cal.
It sounds like you don't even care.
I don't. I am 100 people at a time. One person at a time.
Wow.
I'm trying, for me, this is actually self-reinforcing of things I need. Me being in this arena, this is an extension of me going further than just coaching and consulting on the stuff that I love. To be able to go from the 5-year-old that was always so hard on himself, that created this really narrow lens of what success looked like, right? And that stayed with me for all these years until I had my mind opened up about the way I was operating. And I just want to create the arena that gets bigger and bigger and impacts more and more people where you can also redefine your own success. And if that means staying in IBM for 28 years and loving your life and your family and everything, that's the ticket. And if that means dropping your corporate job at 13 years in to go off and do the thing you should have done at 24, but you were too stubborn, right, and impatient to do it, that's the ticket. Success is relative and success is holistic, and it means productivity at work. It means really healthy, impactful relationships, and it means you're happy and fulfilled, not at the end of the line, but right now in the middle.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm happy right now.
Yeah.
Just being, So we're going to see where this all rolls. Thank you for including me.
No,
It's
Cal.
been great
Cal,
to
thank
get
you.
to know both of you and to be introduced to the line and to also be introduced to this one at a time.
Exactly.
One at a time. Let's just stay in the moment, connect in the moment, carefully listen, ask the right questions, tell the right story, and see where it goes.
Which is exactly what you've done, my friend. And I just got to tell you, just to say that my little closing piece here, you allowing my dad and I to tell our story through you as one of the best storytellers and interviewers, right, is this alone. We've won, man. Like, this is awesome. It is awesome.
Well,
and we're so grateful
We are
that
grateful.
we're getting this chance that even if no one else ever looks at it, we've got it for our own posterity, and my son will have it.
Yeah.
And it's really special. So thank you.
Yeah,
Wow,
we're
thank
humbled
you
that
for
you're
that.
doing this with
Yeah.
us, really.
Thank you for that. I cannot tell you how delighted I am to follow this along, and we'll do more of these so we can chart it.
Yeah.
We'll chart it when you hit 100. We'll chart it when you hit 1,000. You can keep that mindset of one at a time,
Yep.
but we'll keep these landmark conversations going. And 25 years, let's hope we can all look back and laugh.
Yep. Sounds like a plan.
That was great. Thanks, Cal.
All right, take care.
Thanks,
Take
Cal.
care.
Cheers.
Cheers.